In the dusty town of Willow Creek, nestled in the rugged hills of Arizona in 1878, lived a woman whose name had been whispered with pity for the past 3 years. Emma Thornton walked the dirt-packed streets with her chin held high, but each step echoed like a painful reminder of her greatest failure. For 5 long years of marriage, she hadn't given her husband a child. At 28, Emma had watched her childhood friends become proud mothers while her womb remained empty, her heart growing heavier with each passing day. Her heart-shaped face, framed by auburn hair she kept neatly pinned in a bun, had lost the glow that once defined her. Her hazel eyes, once sparkling with dreams of motherhood, now carried a quiet resignation that pained those who noticed. James Caldwell, her husband, was a prosperous rancher of 42, tall with a neatly trimmed mustache and hands that always smelled of leather and whiskey. He'd seen Emma as the perfect wife to carry on his legacy. At first, he was patient, but as the years passed with no child, his patience turned to frustration, then resentment, and finally open scorn. "A woman who can't bear children ain't much of a woman," James muttered one morning over breakfast, not looking up from his coffee. The words landed like shards of glass, shattering what little remained of their marriage. Emma kept pouring his coffee, her hands trembling, pretending she hadn't heard what her soul had known for months. Their marriage had died long before those cruel words. The whole town seemed to know her shame. Women at the general store hushed their voices as she passed, their whispers cutting like knives. "Poor thing, 5 years and nothing. Must be God's judgment for something she done. James ought to find a real wife." Each word carved a fresh wound in her heart. But Emma had learned to walk with dignity even when the world seemed stacked against her. A visit to Dr. Whitaker in Tucson had sealed her fate. The doctor, an older man with spectacles slipping down his nose, delivered the verdict that confirmed the town's whispers. "Mrs. Caldwell, I'm sorry to say your condition is permanent. Your womb is, well, barren. You'll never bear a child." Emma left the office feeling as if part of her had died. Tucson's bustling streets felt foreign. The faces of passers-by blurred through tears she refused to shed in public. When she returned to Willow Creek with the news, James feigned surprise, but his relief was clear. He now had proof to justify what he'd already decided. The divorce was finalized with a speed that stunned even the town's gossips. James found legal grounds, backed by doctors who certified Emma's natural incapacity to fulfill her wifely duties. In 2 months, she signed papers that stripped her of her married name and her place in Willow Creek's respectable society. Her family, led by her father, William Thornton, a stern man who believed family honor hinged on reputation, greeted her with icy disdain. "You've brought shame on our name," he said, avoiding her eyes. "A woman who can't give grandchildren has no place here." Her mother, Clara, wept silently but didn't dare defy her husband. With a small inheritance from her grandmother, Emma rented a modest cabin on the edge of town. By a twist of fate, she found work as a midwife, helping bring into the world the children she could never have. Women sought her out for her gentle hands and knowledge gleaned from medical books, but they always treated her with a mix of gratitude and pity, making her feel like a shadow among the living. At night in her quiet cabin, Emma wondered if God had placed her on earth just to remind other women of their blessings. Each baby she delivered was a joy she cherished, but also a piercing reminder of what she'd never have. Her hands, skilled at welcoming new life, returned each night to a home where only the echo of her footsteps kept her company. Months passed, her routine a melancholic dance between others' births and her own solitude. She found purpose in serving other mothers. But at night when the town slept, the emptiness in her heart seemed to swallow her whole. She'd resigned herself to a life of service without love, of giving life without creating it, of being useful without being happy. Then, one crisp October morning, when the cottonwood leaves turned golden, soldiers rode into Willow Creek with news that would change Emma's destiny. Captain Hayes, a weathered man hardened by years on the frontier, brought a prisoner who set the entire regiment on edge, a Chiricahua Apache warrior captured after a fierce 3-day battle in the mountains. "He's a dangerous savage," the captain told the mayor, as half the town gathered in the square. "But orders from Washington are clear. No executions. The government wants to civilize these Indians, make them useful citizens." The word civilize rolled off his tongue like he was talking about taming a wild Mustang. Mayor Amos Reed, a wiry man who sweated under pressure, mopped his brow with a handkerchief. What are we supposed to do with him? Willow Creek ain't got no jail for dangerous prisoners. He ain't exactly a prisoner, Hayes said with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. Think of him as a project. We need someone to take him in, teach him our ways, our language, our customs. Someone who can turn a savage into a civilized man. All eyes turned to Emma, who stood at the crowd's edge, listening quietly. A woman without a husband, children, or family to protect her, with time between midwifing duties. In the cold calculations of the town's men, she was the perfect candidate for a job no one else wanted. Emma Thornton could do it, James suggested with a cruel smile she knew too well. After all, she ain't got no other responsibilities tying her down. Snickers from some women hit her like invisible slaps. Mayor Reed nodded as if he'd solved a thorny problem. Fine idea. Emma's educated, knows doctrine, and got time. Plus, if something goes wrong, we ain't risking no important family. Emma felt the ground shift beneath her. Once again, she was being used to solve others' problems, assigned a task no one wanted because her life was deemed less valuable than that of any married mother. But seeing the smug grins of James and the other men sparked something inside her, a flicker of defiance long dormant. I'll do it, she declared, her voice steady, surprising even herself. I'll take charge of the Apache. She didn't know those words would seal a fate leading to the greatest happiness of her life. That night, as she prepared her cabin for a guest no one had seen, but all feared, Emma couldn't imagine she was about to meet the man who'd not only change her life, but awaken in her body the ability to create life everyone thought was lost forever. The next morning dawned with a heavy gray sky, hinting at a storm, but nothing prepared Emma for the emotional tempest about to erupt. Soldiers arrived before the town fully woke, their prisoners' chains clanking against the dirt like mournful bells. The Apache warrior walked among them with a dignity that clashed with his captive state. When Emma saw him, her breath caught. Tarak was a 32-year-old man, tall and lean, his frame speaking of years running free across the desert. His sun-bronzed skin bore scars of battles and survival, but his face stopped her cold. Sharp, noble features framed by jet-black hair falling to his shoulders, and dark eyes that seemed to pierce through to the soul. What struck her most wasn't his looks, but his stride. Despite the chains, despite being surrounded by armed enemies, Tarak moved as if he held the reins of the situation. No trace of defeat marked his posture, no sign his spirit had been broken. He was like a hawk caged but still king of the skies in his heart. This is your problem now, Captain Hayes said, shoving Tarak toward Emma's cabin. Orders are to keep him alive and tame him. If he causes trouble, tries to escape, or even looks at you wrong, you let us know. His words carried a veiled threat that prickled Emma's skin. Tarak glanced at her for the first time, and when their eyes met, a jolt shot through her, electric and deep. It wasn't attraction, not yet. It was something primal, a recognition between two souls scarred by suffering in different but equally profound ways. This is the white woman who'll civilize me? Tarak asked in clear English, tinged with an accent that made each word sound like a distant song. His deep voice held a trace of irony, suggesting he found the arrangement as absurd as she did. The captain unlocked his wrist chains but left the ankle ones. He can move around the house, but no going outside without supervision. Mrs. Thornton, you understand the responsibility you have taken. This man's a dangerous warrior. Don't be fooled by any act of tameness. When the soldiers left, kicking up dust, Emma and Tarak stood alone in her small yard. Silence stretched between them like a chasm neither knew how to cross. She studied him as he scanned his surroundings, his eyes missing nothing, as if memorizing every escape route. I reckon I ought to welcome you to my home, Emma said, surprised by her steady tone. Though this ain't exactly a social call. Tarak turned to her, his expression hard to read. Why'd you agree? He asked bluntly, skipping the pleasantries of frontier etiquette. Why would a woman like you take on a dangerous savage? The question caught her off guard with its raw honesty. She considered a polite answer, but something in his piercing gaze told her he'd see through any lie like it was glass. In this town, I'm already an outcast, she replied, matching his candor. A failed woman who couldn't do the one thing she was supposed to. Taking care of you can't ruin a reputation that's already in tatters. Tarak tilted his head, studying her anew. And what was that one thing you couldn't do? Have children, Emma said, holding his gaze. Turns out I'm barren. Useless as a wife, cast off by my family, tolerated by the town only because I can help other women birth what I'll never have. For the first time, something shifted in Tarek's face. The hardness in his eyes softened, replaced by a flicker of understanding. White doctors know little of a woman's body, he said after a pause. In my tribe, healers would say your medicine sleeps, not that it's dead. But your people prefer to call broken what's only waiting for the right moment to wake. His words landed like seeds in parched soil. Emma felt a stir in her chest, a feeling she hadn't known in years. Hope. But she scolded herself for letting a prisoner's words sway her hard-won acceptance of her fate. Pretty words, she said with a sad smile. But facts are facts. 5 years married and not once. 5 years with a man who didn't know how to wake the life in you, Tarak cut in, his voice intense. That don't mean the life ain't there waiting. That first talk set the tone for the weeks that followed. Emma had expected a wild man needing taming, but instead found a man of sharp intellect and deep knowledge that challenged everything she'd been taught about primitive Indians. Tarak bore wounds from his capture that needed care. A deep gash on his shoulder had festered during the journey, and bruises hinted at a brutal fight. When Emma offered to tend him, he eyed her warily. Why heal someone your people call an enemy? He asked as she boiled water and gathered bandages. Because pain is pain, no matter who feels it, she replied without thinking. And because help and heal is the only thing I'm good at. Tarak stayed still as she cleaned the infected wound, her hands gentle but sure, working with the focus of years of practice. When she applied a salve made from local herbs, he surprised her. That mix is decent, but it needs white willow bark for pain and comfrey root to speed healing, he said, watching her work. Where'd you learn herb doctoring? Emma looked up, startled. My grandma taught me some remedies, but most I got from books. How do you know about herbs? A faint smile crossed Tarak's face, the first she'd seen. In my tribe, warriors learn to heal as much as fight. A man who can save lives is as valued as one who can take them. Your grandma was wise to teach you, though white men's books only tell half the story. Over the next days, as Emma treated his wounds, Tarak shared knowledge of plants not found in her books. He spoke of sagebrush for women's pains, raspberry leaf tea to strengthen the womb, and herb blends to rouse dormant forces in a woman's body. Why tell me this? Emma asked one afternoon as they prepared a tincture under his guidance. You could keep your secrets. Tarak paused, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that left her feeling bare. Because I see in you what I see in the desert after a long drought, he said slowly. Everything needed to bloom is there, just waiting for the right rain. His words sparked something deep within her, a feeling she'd forgotten existed. It wasn't just attraction, though that simmered too. It was the realization that this man saw her as whole with untapped potential, not a broken thing beyond repair. But with that spark came fear. Fear of hoping again. Fear of opening a heart she'd spent years shielding. Fear of what the town would say if they suspected she was falling for the Apache she was meant to civilize. One night, as Tarak rested in the spare room she'd fixed for him, Emma sat up staring at the stars through her window. For the first time in years, she didn't feel utterly alone. This mysterious wise man had brought something to her home she hadn't known since childhood. Intelligent conversation, mutual respect, and the dangerous sense that her story might not have ended with divorce and disgrace. She didn't know that in the next room, Tarak was also awake, gazing at the same stars, wondering how a white woman had touched a part of his heart he thought died when he lost his freedom. Nor did she know they were both on the cusp of a journey that would take them far beyond anything either had dreamed possible. Their meeting, arranged by others as a practical convenience, was becoming something its planners never foresaw. The start of a love that would defy their world's rules and awaken miracles to transform their lives forever. Weeks passed, bringing subtle but profound changes to Emma's cabin and their hearts. Each morning she woke with a feeling she'd forgotten, anticipation. For the first time in years, she had something to look forward to beyond midwifing and lonely nights. Tarak began teaching her Apache healing secrets no Western book had ever recorded. My people's knowledge passes from heart to heart, not paper to paper, Tarek explained as he showed her how to brew a special infusion from roots he'd gathered during supervised walks through town. White books treat the body like a broken machine to fix. We know it's a river, sometimes needing stones cleared to flow again. Their hands brushed often as they worked, sorting herbs or mixing remedies. Each touch sending sparks through Emma's skin, stirring sensations she thought long dead. Tarek was patient, kind, but his gaze held an intensity that made something deep in her core pulse with life. One November afternoon, as the sun sank, painting the sky in fiery hues, Tarek taught her about herbs Apache women used to spark fertility. Your people see barrenness as a final sentence, he said, grinding star anise seeds. My people see it as a dream the body can wake from with the right medicine. Do you really believe that? Emma asked, her voice barely a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter her fragile hope. That a woman like me could... Tarek stopped grinding and turned to her, taking her hands in his. The contact made her tremble, not from fear, but from longing so deep it threatened to overwhelm her. It ain't about believing, he said, his voice reaching her soul. It's about waking what's always been there. Herbs are only part of the medicine. The biggest part is true love, the kind that binds two spirits so deep they can create new life together. His words hung like unspoken vows. Tears burned Emma's eyes, but for the first time in years, they weren't from sorrow. They were from a hope so fierce it hurt. Tarek, she murmured, but he gently placed a finger on her lips. Shh, he whispered, leaning close until his warm breath grazed her cheek. Some feelings are too sacred for words. Their first kiss came like rain after an endless drought, soft at first, almost reverent, as if he knew he was touching something broken for so long that too much pressure might shatter it. But when Emma leaned in, giving herself to the moment with a passion she didn't know she still had, the kiss deepened into a silent vow of love and promise. When they parted, both were trembling. Emma realized she had never been kissed by a man who saw her as whole, not a role to fill or a problem to fix. Tarek looked at her like she was a miracle, something precious that had entered his life when he needed it most. This is dangerous, she whispered, staying in his arms. If the town suspects, if anyone sees, true love's always dangerous, he replied, brushing her cheek with a tenderness that melted to her. But living without it's more dangerous still. I've been dying slowly since I lost my freedom, but with you, I'm living again. Their days became a careful dance between necessary discretion and a love that threatened to consume them. By day, they kept up appearances when visitors came or when they went to town for supplies. But in the evenings, alone in the cabin, they shared moments of intimacy that went beyond the physical. Tarek told her tales of his tribe, of running boundless across the mountains, of starlit ceremonies where spirits spoke to his people's hearts. Emma shared her broken dreams, years of feeling invisible, and the loneliness that had nearly destroyed her. In my tribe, there's a ceremony for women who've lost their tie to Mother Earth, Tarek confided one night as they watched the stars from her yard. It's called the Moon's Awakening. Healers brew special medicines, and the woman fasts and prays for 3 nights, asking for her fertility to return. But the biggest part happens when she finds the man whose spirit can wake hers. Emma nestled closer, his warmth a promise of new life. Would it work for someone like me, a white woman? Love and medicine don't see borders, he said, kissing her forehead. Mother Earth don't care if you're Apache or white when you need healing. But their secret joy couldn't stay hidden forever. Rumors started as faint whispers in the general store, suspicious glances when they gathered herbs together, veiled comments about how much time they spent alone. Emma's physical change was undeniable. Her skin glowed with new vitality, her eyes shone with a light absent for years, and she moved with a grace that spoke of a woman who'd rediscovered her own worth. That Emma Thornton's looking different lately, Widow Jenkins remarked at the saloon, her tone laced with venom. A barren woman shouldn't glow like that unless something improper's going on in that cabin. The gossip reached James, who hadn't fully let go of his claim over the woman he'd once called wife. His pride stung at the thought that Emma might have found happiness with another man, especially an Apache savage. One chilly December afternoon, James stormed to Emma's cabin with 2 townsmen, his face a mask of barely contained rage. Emma, he said, his voice tight, we're here to check you're handling your duties with the prisoner proper. We've heard troubling rumors. Tarek emerged from the back, carrying firewood. his presence instantly charging the air like two wolves sizing each other up. Though his chains had been removed weeks ago for good behavior, he was still seen as a threat. "What kind of rumors?" Emma asked, lifting her chin with a courage she didn't fully feel. "Rumors you've forgotten your place," James snapped, glaring at Tarak. "That you're letting this savage corrupt you instead of civilizing him." The word savage landed like a whip. Emma felt a fury so fierce it shocked her. She'd endured insults about herself for years, but hearing James demean Tarak awakened a protective fire she didn't know she had. "Tarak ain't no savage," she declared, her voice clear and strong. "He's a man of honor, wisdom, and heart, worth more than all the civilized men in this town put together." The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the wind rustling the pines. James stared, stunned, while his companions exchanged shocked looks. "You've lost your mind," he muttered, but there was fear in his voice, fear of a woman who no longer bowed to his authority. "I found my mind for the first time in," Emma shot back, stepping closer to Tarak. "I found someone who sees me as a whole woman, not a broken trinket." The standoff might have turned ugly, but Tarak stepped in with the calm of a man who'd faced danger his whole life. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice steady but firm, "there's nothing improper here. Emma's taught me your ways, and I've shared some of my people's medicine. If that offends you, take me back to a cell, but I won't stand for you speaking ill of a woman who's shown more honor and kindness than any white man I've met." His words, delivered with quiet dignity, briefly disarmed the men. James glanced between Emma and Tarak, his eyes narrowing as if plotting his next move. "This ain't over," he growled, motioning for his men to follow. "The town won't stand for one of our women stooping so low. There'll be consequences." As they left, their threats lingering like smoke, Emma and Tarak faced the truth. Their time was running out. The love they'd found was too powerful to hide, but too dangerous to be tolerated by a society that saw any challenge to its norms as a threat to crush. That night, under the stars that had witnessed their growing love, they knew a choice loomed: submit to a world that rejected them, or fight for a love that promised freedom at the cost of everything they'd known. The decision to flee came in the pre-dawn hush, when James's threats grew too real to ignore. Tarak knew hidden trails through the mountains, paths his people had used for generations to move unseen. With only essentials packed in saddlebags, Emma and Tarak slipped away before dawn, leaving behind a life of constraints for a future where their love could thrive without judgment. Their three-day trek through the desert tested their endurance and faith. Emma, unused to such hardship, battled exhaustion and thirst, but Tarak's strength and knowledge of the land kept them safe. Each night he wrapped her in his blanket and shared stories of his tribe as the stars wove maps of hope across the endless sky. The Chiricahua Reservation lay in a sheltered valley, ringed by mountains like a natural fortress. When they arrived, dusty and weary, Tarak's people greeted them with cautious curiosity. A white woman in Apache territory was unheard of, but Tarak's introduction of Emma as his chosen partner carried enough weight for a chance. Kiona, the tribe's lead healer, was a 60-year-old woman whose sharp eyes seemed to see beyond the surface. When she examined Emma, her weathered hands paused over her abdomen, her face thoughtful. "This woman carries sleeping medicine," Kiona declared in Apache, later translated by Tarak. "White doctors don't understand that some spirits need time to bloom, like flowers waiting for the right season." Emma's first months on the reservation were a slow adjustment. She learned Apache ways, helped prepare food and medicines, and gradually earned the women's respect. Her Western medical knowledge, blended with Kiona's ancient wisdom, created treatments that benefited the whole community. In her fourth month there, Emma noticed subtle changes in her body: morning nausea she chalked up to a new diet, then an unshakable fatigue that left her napping in the hot afternoons. When her breasts ached and her monthly cycle didn't come, an impossible thought took root. "It can't be," she whispered one morning, studying herself in a small, polished tin mirror in their teepee. Dr. Whitaker said it was impossible. Tarak found her by the valley stream, silent tears on her cheeks. Without a word, he sat beside her and waited, his patience a gift honed by years of understanding her pain. "I think I'm pregnant," she finally whispered, as if speaking it might make the possibility vanish. "But I don't understand how. All the doctors, all those years trying." Tarak took her trembling hands. "My people's medicine teaches that true love can wake forces asleep for years. Your body wasn't broken, Emma. It was waiting for the right man to spark new life. Kiona confirmed their hopes and fears. After a careful exam with special herbs to read the body's signs, the old healer smiled deeply. The seed has found fertile ground, she announced to the tribe around the ceremonial fire that night. This white woman will bear a child to bridge two worlds. The news rippled through the camp. Some saw it as a blessing, a sign the spirits approved of Emma and Tarek's bond. Others worried about a mixed-blood child in a world already hostile to their people. But for Emma, nothing mattered but the miracle growing inside her. For years, she'd believed her body was flawed, incapable of life's sacred purpose. Now, feeling the first soft kicks, she knew she'd been waiting for the right love, not just the right man. Her pregnancy unfolded with an ease that amazed everyone. Emma, who'd feared complications due to her age and history, thrived under Kiona and Tarek's care. Apache herbs strengthened her body, while her new family's love fed her spirit. When her time came, during a spring storm that seemed to herald rebirth, Emma gave birth to a healthy boy whose first cry echoed through the valley like a triumph. Tarak wept openly as he held his son, seeing in his tiny features a perfect blend of their worlds. "He'll be called Kael," he said, using an Apache name meaning strong spirit. "He'll carry his mother's healing and his father's strength." But the miracles didn't stop. 18 months later, Emma bore twins, a girl named Tala, after her father, and a boy called Elias. The tribe celebrated these births as signs of divine abundance. Their fourth child came when Emma was 33, 5 years after being declared barren forever. Nico, meaning son's gift, completed a family that defied all medical and social predictions. 4 children, Emma murmured one afternoon, watching her kids play by the stream with Tarak at her side. 4 miracles that shouldn't exist according to the doctors. "Doctors see with narrow eyes," Tarak replied, pulling her close. "They can't see what the spirits do, that some women need their true partner to fully wake their medicine." The woman once shunned as barren had become a mother of 4 healthy, beautiful children. More than that, she'd become a living bridge between cultures, proving true love could conquer any divide and spark miracles that transform not just lives, but entire communities. On quiet desert nights, as she sang to her children in a mix of English and Apache, Emma reflected on the extraordinary journey from her deepest shame to her fullest blessing. Her heart swelled with gratitude for a fate that had disguised her greatest gift as her greatest punishment, bringing Tarak into her life when they needed each other most. 7 years after Emma and Tarak fled, whispers of their story reached Willow Creek through traders and travelers. The barren woman had borne not 1 but 4 children with the Apache warrior. James, now married to a 19-year-old who'd given him 2 sons, became obsessed with the tales. His pride couldn't bear that the woman he'd discarded as useless had found joy in motherhood with another. For months, he planned an expedition to find Emma, convinced he could reclaim her and prove any children were his by right. James's party, 10 armed men with the mayor's blessing, aimed to capture a fugitive Apache. But when they reached the valley, they froze. Emma stepped from a teepee adorned with healing symbols, cradling her youngest, while 3 other radiant children played around her. Her transformation was so complete that James barely recognized her. The timid, broken woman was gone, replaced by a sun-kissed matriarch with eyes glowing with unshakable peace. "Emma," James stammered, dismounting stiffly, "I've come to take you home. Those kids need to grow up civilized, not like savages." Emma's laugh was clear and free, untouched by bitterness. "James, this is my home. My children are growing with love, wisdom, and freedom. What more could I want for them?" Tarak appeared beside her, no longer the chained prisoner, but a free man in his own land. His quiet authority made James's men step back. "Your former wife don't belong to you, Tarak said calmly. She chose to stay with me, and I chose to love her as she deserves. Our children are born of that true love." James stared at the 4 children clinging to Emma's skirts, their mixed features stunningly beautiful, their eyes bright with curiosity. The proof of Emma's fertility mocked the years he'd blamed her for their childless marriage. "This can't be," he muttered, more to himself. "Doctors said you were barren. 5 years with me and never—" "5 years with a man who saw me as a broken tool," Emma cut in, her voice serene but firm. "My body wasn't broken, James. It was waiting for true love to wake it. The group stayed 3 days, long enough for James to see the life Emma had built. He watched her work with Kiona, crafting medicines that healed Apache and visitor alike. He saw her teach her children with endless patience, blending both cultures into an education richer than anything in Willow Creek. But what struck him deepest was how Tarak treated her. Every gesture, glance, and word radiating respect and devotion James had never offered. On the final night, Emma approached James as he sat alone under the stars. "I forgive you," she said simply, sitting at a respectful distance. "I forgive the pain, the humiliations, the cruelty, because without that suffering, I wouldn't be here." "How can you forgive so easy?" he asked, his voice thick. "Because holding on to anger is a cage that only hurts the one inside," she replied, her wisdom born of pain. "I've found a happiness so full there's no room for bitterness." As the expedition prepared to leave, James spoke one last time. "Your folks want to meet their grandkids," he said haltingly. "They know they wronged you." Emma nodded gracefully. "Someday when the kids are older, we'll visit, but as guests, not beggars. This is our home now." Years later, as Emma and Tarek's children grew and started families, their story became legend. Travelers from distant towns came to meet the white healer who'd found medicine for body and soul among the Apache. On still desert nights, as Emma and Tarak sat under the stars that had seen their love begin, they marveled at their miraculous lives. The punishment meant to break her had become her greatest blessing. "Ever regret it?" Tarak asked sometimes, though he knew her answer. "Never," she'd reply, squeezing his weathered hand. "I found my place, my purpose, my true love. What more could I ask?" In the distance, their grandchildren's laughter echoed across the desert, living proof that miracles happen when two hearts meet at the precise moment fate ordains.